Hey guys, good morning. It's Dr. Julie Two Moon. It is a rainy, cloudy Thursday, or God, it's Tuesday, cloudy Tuesday where I'm at. In case you don't know me, I am Dr. Julie Two Moon. I'm the creator of From Surviving to Thriving, a plan to get you out of exhaustion, out of hormone imbalance, and into a life that's full of thriving energy. So I wanted to jump on real quick today and talk to you guys about the role of obligation. I know it's kind of like a dirty little word, not so little, but anyway, dirty word, because obligation is one of our huge destroyers of our life vitality. I can tell you that anyone I've ever worked with and helped them get themselves out of a path of diminished vitality had to learn to establish a different relationship with this. And our lives are pretty much based on obligation. I mean, the Western world, this Western world that most of us are living in, is one where we tend to feel guiltily obligated to a whole lot of things that we don't really love. I hear from people all the time, I'm obligated to go to this work event. I'm obligated to entertain my spouse's boss. I'm obligated to show up at my kids' events and participate. I'm obligated to the PTA. I'm obligated to volunteer in the classroom. I'm obligated to go to the gym. Hey, that's one. That honestly doesn't necessarily serve us the way we think it does. I'm obligated to do the shopping, answer my emails, respond to Facebook messages. I mean, the list goes on and on. Obligation is huge. And granted, I will say that some of our positions on obligation have a lot to do with the way we perceive things. So some things that we consider to be obligations could be reframed as opportunities, and it would change our relationship with it. So that is an option. But in truth, obligation is the biggest detractor of our vitality in a lifestyle arena that we have. And people tell me all the time, I don't feel like I have time to devote to get well, to get healthy. I don't have time for self-care. And that's because obligation is eating up your time. I mean, I would guesstimate that 50% of your time in an average day is devoted to things that don't actually serve your highest wellness or your highest recovery or your highest self, if you want to put it that way. And this is huge, guys. I mean, come on, 50% of your life is dedicated to stuff that doesn't serve you. I mean, what the hell is that? That is not living. That is just barely eking by moment to moment. So let me ask you a question. What if energy and obligation were closely linked partners? What if you had to change your relationship with one to change the relationship with the other? Well, I've found this to be extremely true. I have found that it is next to impossible to regain true vitality in a person unless you change their relationship with obligation, and vice versa. If you aren't replenishing energy in your system, it's next to impossible to change your relationship with obligation. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we have to get specific. We're all drawn down. I don't know a person who isn't drawn down. And you may not feel that exhausted, but I guarantee you that if you had someone like me evaluate you, we could prove that you are. So we're all drawn down. So we have to put in place specific measures to replace what's missing. And if you've seen me talk before, you know that energy is actually, it's not even just a function of rest. It's a function of nutrients. It's a function of what we eat. It's a function of how our mind works. It's a function of how we choose to move our body and if we're moving it too much or in the wrong ways. It's a function of how we choose to rest. It's a function of where our joy is, if we're having pleasure. I mean, it's a function of so many things, right? And obligation is a function of what we perceive to be true. And so obligation is where we've assumed responsibility for things that aren't necessarily ours. And so if you want to jettison and change your relationship with obligation, you actually have to have enough energy in your system to do so. So a lot of times with people, I begin the process by coaching them on means and methods to restore physical vitality to their system, because otherwise the outlook is pretty dark, is what I've seen. I mean, I find this with people all the time. I can't is their response. Now, some would say, oh, hey, come on. that's just mindset work. It's not just mindset work. Your mindset is strongly influenced by how much energy there is in your cells. Why would your brain be any different? Do you think that if your cells are utterly exhausted and barely functional, that you can just turn around and expect your brain to produce a different result? I mean, that's a little bit ridiculous. And I find that when we go about it that way, it's hollow. So in changing our relationship to obligation, we must change the amount of energy in our cells. And that's why I work with people so intently on how we're supposed to eat and what supplements we need to swallow and daily activities that let us do that. And then when it comes to obligation, it's all about asking the right questions. And the people that I work with, we really focus on those aspects. You need to change the question. You need to ask the right questions so that you can change your relationship with what's true. And here's the deal. You're called to live a life of genius. And most of you are living a life of excellence or even competency. And let me tell you what the difference is. So competency is, hey, I'm decent at this. Excellence is you're pretty damn good at it. And in the role of excellence, people freaking love what you do. I'll tell you that most of you are in jobs where you're exhibiting excellence. In the role of excellence, you can excel at what you do, but it doesn't light you up. People love it because they can rely on you and you are consistent and you pretty much deliver a reasonable performance most of the time. In your role of genius, you're lit up by what you do. It comes from your soul. The energy, therefore, is from that divine miracle. You hear me talk all the time. You are a divine miracle of creation. And when you are functioning from your place of genius, the energy for that comes from that divine place because you're answering the calling. So obligation are things that fall into our zone of competency and excellence. But when we live more in our zone of genius, we're living in the zone of opportunity. So part of when we've restored enough energy and you can start to think outside the box because you're not so burdened and you actually have the capacity to see the view, and even change that view's perspective, then you start to see the world from that place of, well, what is my genius? My gosh, if I'm only going to be here for 80 or 100 years, and if I find myself and I'm 40, well, I'm personally 42, but if I'm 40 or between 40 and 60, then I better damn well be tapping into my genius because I don't want to live a life that's based off of obligation. I want to live a life that's based off of my genius, things that light me up. I want to be powered by that divine miracle. I don't want to be just eking along and trying to provide enough energy that I can meet other people's needs of me, but not meet the needs of myself. And that's that place of resolving that relationship with obligation. And this is what I have seen people who reach a place of true thriving. They deal with both sides of it. So they replace the energy and then they step into relationship with that genius. And we do this by working both sides of the puzzle. So you can't just work one. You can't just do mindset and expect that your place of genius is going to be there and thriving. You have to do the physicality too, because that's the dynamic nature of us. We are a physical being with a mental being and an emotional being and a spiritual being, and they're intertwined inextricably. So you can't separate one from the other. You have to work from all places. So look, obligation, it is a dirty thing, and I don't want you to live a life of obligation. I don't want you to exist in your place of mere excellence or competency. I want you to tap your place of genius. And your place of genius may be something you haven't even thought of. It may be something you know in your heart right now. But that place of genius stops the drawdown, because that role of obligation, the place where so many of us are living, that place is so freaking exhausting. Because we wake up and the list of things we have to do aren't things that light us up. Now, you're going to have to do things that don't light you up. I get that. But I'm just encouraging you to understand that place of obligation is a place of burden, and you don't have to live a life of burden. And I can tell you that if you're exhausted and if your hormones are out of whack and if you're in pain, you've been meeting the obligations of other people your entire life. And where's it gotten you? I mean, right now, if you don't feel well, and if you're not living your life from a place of dynamic vitality, then it's time to change that. because living your life for other people is a hollow existence. It's not even really living. And this is what I see in people all the time. I talk to people all the time who are not really living. They're making it from moment to moment. They're making it from day to day, but they're not alive. And what I hear in their voice is this calling, this desire to actually feel what it feels like to be alive. And when I talk to them about the role of obligation in their life, I've never talked to one who didn't feel like that role of obligation was just massive. So this is what I'm here to inspire you today, is to set in motion the changing of your relationship with this thing, this obligation thing, and to start to pay attention to the role that obligation is playing in your life, and perhaps the possibility that it is one of the biggest detractors to you accessing the best possible life that you could be experiencing in your physical body, in your mental body, in your emotional body, in your spiritual body. And then saying, I'm done letting obligation rule the roost. I am not a servant to obligation. I am a servant to my biggest, most powerful genius. And I'm going to tap that. And if you find that you're like, how the hell do I do that? Then reach out, because there is no better time than now. And if you've got 50 years left on the planet, if you've got 40, if you've got 60, man, it is time to thrive, because life is here for our taking. This is our birthright, to live fully expressed, to tap that genius, to experience the divine nature of us in every moment. And if you're not there, it's time to get there, because that's what you're here for. So my name is Dr. Julie Two Moon. I wish you a beautiful, bountiful Tuesday. If you need help, comment below. Let's talk and see if we can change your relationship with obligation, if we can put the energy back in your system and get you to a life that is about your genius, because I want to know what your genius is. I'm certain you're here to deliver it. I know that I am. So many blessings, and have a beautiful day.